Coming up, adding multiple pages, showing the dog details, deleting and adding dogs, and maybe plotting a graph of the dog's weights. We've got a lot to do today, so let's get back to the code pit and bash out some code. Welcome back to Coding with My Dogs.
Welcome to Byte Size, the easily digestible information treat tangential to today's topic. And today we'll be looking at structures that Rust provides for situations where we have to pass multiple copies of a value around without being hampered by the borrow checking and lifetime rules. So we start here by looking at arc of t. Arc is the atomic reference counted pointer. This means that the references themselves are immutable, but they are assigned in an atomic manner, meaning that if a thread is preempted at any stage during assigning a new reference counted clone, it won't be missed or double counted, i.e. it remains consistent and all clones are accounted for. So here we can see creating a new arc structure, and what we're doing here is creating 3 threads, and each of those is taking in this clone of our original data. And each of these clones is effectively an immutable reference to the original block of data, i.e. this vector. And what that means then is that each of those threads has access to their own copy, and when the thread exits or that variable goes out of scope, basically the reference counting container can then deallocate that reference and understand how many references are left to the original. So you could ask, why don't we just use immutable borrows? Well, in many cases you can, and if you can, you should. Arc exists for situations where the compiler cannot verify the lifetime of a borrow, such as here where we pass ownership to another thread. So it's deferring compile time checking to runtime, but using a well-known construct to manage this. And just as a side note, for the sake of the demo, I needed to do this because basically we're creating 3 threads and then immediately exiting from the main loop. And what's likely to happen is that the entire program will exit before all 3 of those threads have managed to run up and create their output. So we're just putting in a short delay there. But realistically, you wouldn't do that in real life. If you have a situation like this, you want to make sure that you rejoin each of the threads to make sure that they complete anything that they need to complete. This just is an example to make it a little bit cleaner for the demo. RC is a reference counted pointer. It's used for situations where we need multiple references to the same object, but can't use borrows. So if you look at this example here where we are building up a graph, we're creating this node D to start off with, which is a reference counted pointer into the node. Then we create nodes B and C. Both of these have D as a child. So it's 2 separate parents, each with D as a child. And then finally we create A, which has a reference to B and C. So basically we've got A at the top, goes to B and to C, and then both of those go back to D. So D is shared in 2 locations, which, would not work if you wanted to use the normal mechanism for borrowing. And with plain borrows, you need to guarantee that D outlives both B and C and anything that holds them, which then quickly becomes a tangle of lifetimes. And we can prove the reference counting by this, which outputs the number of references that there are to D. And you can see when this gets output, there are 3 references. So those are basically from the 2 parents and our original reference that we had for D. So we can see there's 3 references there. And then this shows the output of that graph. And we use RC rather than ARC because it will be slightly more performant, But equally, it gives an indication of intent that this is not intended for concurrent use. This is just used within one thread. Next up, we have a ref cell. A ref cell can be thought of as a runtime variant of the borrowing system in Rust. Here we demonstrate that we're able to take two immutable references to the same string and prove that they both point to the same memory. So we define our string here, borrow it twice, do some stuff here to access the memory locations, which we can then print out here and here. And you can see, therefore, that both of those pointers point to the same location in memory. And same as for borrowing, you can either take multiple immutable references or a single mutable reference, but not a mixture of both and not multiple mutable references. So in this next example, we take a mutable borrow of the ref cell, and then here mutate the value. But importantly, we go out of scope here, which means that the mutable borrow is returned. There are no longer any references into that ref cell, and therefore it's quite legitimate to then take a immutable borrow from it and output the value there, which is what we see. We see the changed value being output. But what happens if we try and take the immutable ref without releasing the mutable one first? So that gives us this situation here. It's exactly the same code. The only difference is that we don't have this in its own block. So we are not releasing the writer at the end there before we create the reader using cell borrow here. And that basically means that at runtime, we're going to get a panic. So there are many other mechanisms provided by Rust. For true multi-threaded concurrent code, you can move to locking mechanisms like mutex or RW lock. Mutex allows access to the protected value only by taking out an exclusive lock, so it can be accessed and or mutated only by one thread at a time. RW lock adapts this with the now familiar pattern of many readers but only one writer. Multiple threads can read the protected value simultaneously, but only one thread can write to the value, and only when there are no readers. And we've just covered the tip of the iceberg here. There is deep functionality for concurrent programming available in the Rust language, and we could talk for hours about it. But now we need to get back to our project and get started on today's coding. Okay, so we're full on into the user interface now. And in this first session, what we need to do is to set up page routing so that we can have pages specifically for individual dogs to edit the details for the dog. We can have pages to show potentially a graph of the dog weights. We can have what used to be our landing page as a home page, which lists all of the dogs and then allows you to click on the dog to go through to the dog specific page. And then, we need some other things like a page to hit if we try to navigate to a URL that's not one of the defined ones for our router. So let's take a look at that and bash out some code. So here we are back in our project. And we have our main.rs, which is pretty much all that we've been doing so far for the user interface. And just as a refresher, what we have here is the container class that will contain our table of dogs and list all of the dogs like so. So what we first need to do is to extract what we have here into a new component, which we'll call home.rs. And to start with, let's just copy across everything there. Obviously, this is not going to have a main routine. That can go. And we can rename the component to homepage. It will still need to do fetch dogs when we first go into it. So I think that's all fine. The view is going to be the same. We might want to keep the header in the app component. So the app component will contain the general page layout and the router, which will then allow us to route to separate pages. So this stuff here will just be in our app component. So we can just delete it. Go down to the end and delete the rest of the main component there. Fix the indent. Like so, and that's probably what we need for our home page. Save that down. We're going to need a module to define these things. And we'll put in the home page. It's just called home. Pubmod home, is that right? And then we need to refer to that module from our main.rs. And let's create another folder here. So call that source pages. And then we can move our home page. Yes, obviously. And the module into there. And then in main.rs, we can say we're going to use module pages like so. Which means this comes to life. It now knows how to get to this from main. And that's good. So then within main, we can make those changes we discussed. We are going to remove everything in here. And this is basically where our route is going to go. So we will need, and we don't need the fetch dogs anymore. This is just our app component. It's not going to do anything itself. It's just going to present the view that has the page structure and it has the router within it. So we need to add a new module for the router. I think it's Leptos router. So cargo add Leptos router. We need to be in the user interface. Okay, that's nice. That's added. So here we can then have our router. Should be unhappy with because it doesn't know what that is. But if we add that like so, it should now be happy. And missing required field. Okay, like just, can you give me the chance to do it first? So how we do this is we say path equals, and then there's a path macro, which just allows us to put in, path like so, and then view equals home page for that. Save that down. Path equals. So let's import root there. Let's find the path, which is presumably that one. And let's find home page. Okay, it knows where that is. Nope, it's not happy about something. Can't find homepage. It's there. We did call it homepage, right? We did call it homepage. Oh, what we didn't do is make it public. Yay, there we go. So that still doesn't fix us. Yeah, so I just had a quick look at the docs. I got that slightly wrong. So we need router, which is the outermost thing within our view. Not sure if this div is required. I'll try it without first. Then within the router, we will have our sort of header and our main component. Then we need a roots element. And then within the roots element, and the roots has this fallback. So let's copy that. That's what happens with not found. And then within the roots is our set of root, which is fine. So this is here becomes our roots, which we'll need to bring in. And then, of course, we don't need the suspense because we're not loading anything. So we can just replace that with router. Like so. Then it needs us to include roots, which is fine. And it is happy. We can remove usings that we don't use. Okay. So it mounts it as an app. The app itself has a router, which defines the standard page, and then has within the main container, it will load in whatever components we want. So we've defined homepage for the moment, but let's go ahead and define a few more that we'll probably need. So we will want to go to a specific dog with the dog's name. We may want to display the dog's weights. So we would get that in a similar way, father name, but then weights, something like that. Let's call that dog page. Let's call that dog weights page. And we've got the fallback for not found there, but we want to have a not found page. And I think we can do a catch-all root at the end here. So basically, if you don't match any of these by the time you get here, we go to a not found page. So I found if you do asterisk any, that will do the matching of anything that starts with a slash and that hasn't matched one of these ones above. And then that will give us a not found page. So if we keep that not found page at the bottom, even if we add more roots, it will catch everything that falls all the way through. And then rather than having this fallback, which will presumably just write not found in the middle of the page, it will go to our nice not found page instead, and we can add some styling and some fun stuff to that. So let us add a skeleton for each of these pages here. We need dog weight.rs. We need dog weight.rs. And we need not found.rs. I always make that mistake. It should be underscore, shouldn't it? It's, what do we call it? Snake case rather than kebab case. And that should make that happy. Excellent. And we need to then just create a really empty shell in each of these that will represent the component for now. And then in the next session, we can then get into populating what happens for the dog and how you can view all the fields for a dog and modify dogs and create new dogs and all of that good stuff. But for now, just an empty skeleton in these. So let's just copy that bit there. Like so. So we've got a component. This is our not found page. Like so. And then we need our view bang macro. And then something like h1. Something like that. And let's copy that and put it into the other ones. And dog weight page. So I have started the database Docker container. Let's cargo run. Start our API. And then here we can do our trunk serve -- open. And that should automatically take us, and it does, to the home page, which is super. Now let me remind myself. So it's dog name weights, and then anything else for not found page. And that's not found. Well, that's disappointing. Why has it gone to there? Okay, right. So basically, it's because I didn't save my changes to main.rs, and obviously it doesn't work because we haven't added these other pages yet. What do we call that? Dog weights page. And that makes it happy. That was confusing. Okay, right. So let us go back into there. That's demonstrating what we get with the not found page because we didn't give this dog a name. If we give it a name, it goes to the dog page. And if we navigate to the dog weights, then it shows that. And if we go back to the home page, then we see that home page here. So that's brilliant. One last thing I want to do in this session, though, is to see what we can do to click through from one of these lines on the home page and have it redirect us to the specific dog page for the one that we click on. So let's bash out some code for that. So the first thing I want to do here is to give the user some indication that there is an action available to them as they move across this list. So I will give the row a specific CSS class that we can then use within our own style sheet to do some things like, a row hover effect and changing the cursor. So let's do that. Class equals, and I'm going to call it clickable row because why not? Like so. Now what I need to do is to add a style sheet. And because our application is relatively simple, I don't think we need like per component style sheets the way you sort of tend to do within Angular. It may or may not be possible to do that within Leptos, but the easiest thing we can do here is to just create a style.css at the top level and then link that in from our index.html. So let's just do that. Like so, and then we've got .clickable row, and we can give some classes to give some styles to that in a second. Do not use empty resources. Well, give me a chance. I haven't added anything to it yet. So, and that shouldn't be in source. That should be in the user interface level itself. Yes, please. And then index.html, we can use link equals style sheet. href equals style, should call it styles really, styles.css, like so. Save that down. And if we do it like that, we should at least see the cursor change. Kind of strange that it changes to a caret. Anyway, so something happens there. Let's also put in some styles for the hover. And with a little bit of AI research, I found that you can access some of this set coloring from the pico.css library by doing something like this. And it seems this is necessary as well. Let's see how that looks. Nothing. Is it bringing the styles in at all? Let's do what you always do when trying to diagnose style sheet issues. Double check that it actually works at all. And it doesn't. Let's trace it through. So it's clickable dash row. Clickable dash row tr class equals. We've saved both of those, right? Your class is clickable row. Let's bring in the style sheet. It's got the clickable row class. What is the problem? The problem is same issue that we had when we were trying to load up the JPEG, that it's actually returning the HTML for the entire thing when anything is requested, which is not right. Maybe we need to do that with the style sheet. Nope. Doesn't like that. Right, so it seems we just need to call this rel CSS. And that should know what to do with it. So it's picking up the styles now and it's still not doing anything. Ah, that's very unfortunate. Oh. Okay. I stand corrected. It is changing the cursor and it is changing the background color. It's just not making that background red that we were expecting, but probably that's because this is overriding that style. We're basically setting the background color twice. So that's great. We can now see the row is being selected. So the final thing we need to do is to, when we click on the row, to go across and route to the dog/dog name page that relates to that row. So let's have a look at that. So basically we need to build up the URL based on the dog's name here. And then it is /dog. Is it dog? /dog/name, yeah. And then comma dog.name.clone, like so. And then I found this we need to set up as function elliptus router hooks, and then use navigate like so. So that gives us a function that can be used within an on-click handler here. On-click equals and then we need one of these closures that takes ownership of the thing that you're calling into it with. And then it's navigate to, what did I call it? Dog's name. I kept saying dog's name. It's dog's URL. Navigate to dog's URL. And that's apparently what we need to do. Is it happy with that? No. It's not happy because I misspelled the name. And that's running. So let's take a look. We're back here. If we go to CS dog and click, it navigates to CS dog. So that's brilliant. That's what we were hoping to do. So within this session, we've managed to reorganize everything. So we've got the multiple pages, we've got the router set up, and we've modified this main page so that you can visually highlight the rows and then click through to get to the dogs. So yeah, that's coming up. We will implement the dog component. It will give us the ability to view the fields related to the dog specifically and enable us to make edits to those fields. But for now, let's go and take a look at the whiteboard.
Okay, Mr. T. So what we're going to do, we've already seen us dividing up a page like that into the sub-pages, like so. And all of those sub-pages will develop in the later session. So first, we're going to have our page that has the dog. And in the dog, we've got various fields and a button to save with. Are you listening? Okay. And then also we can just use that to create a new dog if we want to. So we just enter the data into those various fields, and that's all we need for the new dog. And then finally, we'll have somewhere to put in the weights. And that will show a little graph that shows the dog's weight over time. Does that make sense? You're not so interested in that then, Mr. T? Okay, well, we'll just get on with it anyway. Off you go.
Okay, so we've got to the point where our homepage and our router are working, and we've got this stub of a dog page and some of the other pages as well. So let's get into implementing what we need on the dog page to fetch the dog that we're asking for and to display the details, and then allow the user to do some actions like, potentially deleting that dog and reusing the same form so that we can create a new dog by starting up with blank fields that can then be entered into and saved by the user. So let's bash out some code. Here we are back in dog.rs, and as you remember from last time, all this does at the moment is just show this one heading that shows where the dog details go. What we need to do is to set this up to be able to load in the dog that gets provided to this. What we can do is have a look at what we did in home.rs. We have this fetch dogs function. So let's copy that across. Let's copy off the using statements as well, because we probably need some or most of those. Paste that in there. And what we're doing now is, of course, we want to fetch a specific dog, and we're going to pass in dog name there. str, sorry, lowercase str. Let's make that a string ref. And that is not going to return a vec. It's just going to return the individual dog DTO of the dog that we want to fetch. And then the other thing we need to do is that obviously we are we're going to format a URL. So let's just do that. Let dog URL equals format bang, and then we are taking that URL there. Like so, and then passing in dog name. Now, in a future iteration, we should probably be checking for dog names that cause issues with URL encoding. But for the sake of our demo, we can just assume that, you know, tdog, csdog, etc., they're all just going to work. So we won't bother too much with that. But we've got the dog's URL, so we can now pass that in there. Dog URL, I should say, dog URL, like so. So that fetches the single dog, and the response is a dog DTO, which is what we would expect. And we are returning a result from that response. So that looks good to me. Now, again, at the start of this component implementation, what we need to do is to kick something off when the page first loads, in the same way that we did here. And that is calling into that function to get the dog. But the difference here is that obviously we need to, let's just copy that across. Difference here being that we need to get the name of the dog that got passed into this component via the router. So if we have a look at the router in main.rs, you can see that for dog name, for dog, we are passing in this name, and we need to be able to get that off the path parameters. So what can we do there? Let's put that into a block like so. And then we can say something like let params equal use params map, like so, which gives us a link into the set of parameters that get collected by the router and passed into the component. And we specifically want to fetch the dog name, so we can say let dog name equal params dot read dot get, and we are calling that, I believe it's the name that we pass in here, so it's just name dot unwrap, like so. Obviously, we are not catching errors here, so if for some reason that parameter isn't provided, it's going to blow up at this point. That's a task for another time, another series maybe. So that gives us the dog name, and then we can return the result of fetch dog with dog name. So in both of these cases, we'll just use .asstr temporary value dropped while borrowed. Consider using a let binding to create a longer lived value. So it doesn't like me to do it there. It wants me to do it there. Yep. Well, that's not the way I'd prefer to do it, but that'll have to do. And what we can then do is change this to one of those suspense contracts so that it only shows the data once dog has been loaded correctly. So let's do that. Again, we can go to our home page and copy over some of the stuff like this. We are using dog.get dog. It's its own view. Close that and close the suspense. Okay. Close the parenthesis. That's starting to look good. And then let's see if within here we can say dog name and then dog dot name. How does that look? So let's go into the API, run that up. I've already started the database. And now we can go into our user interface and trunk serve minus open. And if we click through to one of these, we don't get anything. 404. Okay, so it is trying to fetch the dog. It's not finding it. Is this to do with case sensitivity? We've got T-dog there with capitals. And it is capitals in the database. So it's loading the page. 8080 dog T-dog, but it can't load a T-dog from the API. Oh, do you know what? I think probably I've broken the API, haven't I? So let's go back and look at the code. I think I changed it to dog, but it's the API that I'm calling for that URL, not the router page. Yeah, I think this is still dogs / dog name like so. Let us try that. And it magically works. So there we go. Dog name T-dog. That's coming back from the database. So that's good. So what we now want to do is to change this here into a form that has the various parts of the dog's details on it. And what I think we want to do is something like this. This is, again, looking at the Leptos book, and we don't need anything complicated. What I think we can do here is to just collect these element references from the set of inputs that we put within our form, like so. And then that means that when we have a submit function, we can go and get the value from those fields directly, like so, and then write the changes that we want to the database. So let's proceed with this. We want to have something like an input element. And we'll call this, I don't want to call it input element, but just say it's like dog name element, like so. And then here we want to have a form. We'll come back to onSubmit later. We will have a label. We will have an input type, is it? Type. Text. So value equals name, and then node underscore ref is that element. Value equals, and that's for us, it's dog.name. Node underscore ref equals dog name el, like so. That looks good. What do we get? We get an error. Okay. HTML module. Leptos HTML, I guess. Happy, happy, happy. Yep, it's happy. And close that down, but there we go. That's nice. So we got a form with the dog's name and the actual name underneath. We do not want this to be editable at the start here because this is just showing us an existing dog. So let us make read only equals true. And there we go. So that's that. Let's bring across the other 4 parts of the dog. I don't know why it can't intelligently. This is the thing. Like, there's a lot of AI intelligence in things like VS Code and Visual Studio now. It's trying to second guess what you're doing, but it still can't work out how to do this when you're copying and pasting bits of code and how to get the tabs right for each bit that you paste in. I always end up having to do this. And if anyone knows that, you know, am I doing something wrong here? But it always seems to be this way. I end up having to correct everything like that. But there we go. That's first world problem. So we've got the breed, current weight. And then we can do the same here. We've got breed. Breed here. Current weight element. So that's everything there. Is not satisfied. Okay, let's do toString on the end of that. DOB, not DOG. There we go. So, dog name, T-Dog, Golden Retriever. Excellent. If I go back to the home, we could do with a button to go to home, couldn't we? We can then just choose one of the others. That gives us that. I tell you what, let's before we finish here, let's just stick a button at the bottom here, which will be the one that we use for deleting the dog if we want to get rid of it, or when we come into the mode where we can create a new dog, that will be to save the changes. So let's stick that in here. So I believe we can put input type equals submit. Value equals delete dog, something like that. And there we go. We've got a button that we can use. Doesn't do anything yet because, well, actually it does. It redirects. So let's put in a handler for on submit then. On colon submit, is it? Submit equals something like on submit, and then yeah, let's copy this over. Okay, yeah, there we go. Prevent default. So let's copy that, drop it in here, and we would say, like, you know, as an example here, we are getting dog name equals dog name element. get dot expect dot value. So that expectation should never fail because it basically means that we've got something wrong in the code if that's the case. So that's fine. And then we need to actually wire that in back down here, don't we? Underscore submit like so. Why don't you like that? Okay, it's just, so it doesn't know submit event. Let's bring that in. Oh, typo, that's what it is. Dot get, save. And then go to csdog. That's all there. And if we click this, it should effectively do nothing because it's not redirecting anymore. So we got the delete dog button there. Now let's try and add the functionality to call into the API to delete the dog when that button's hit. So back in our code here, let's have a look. This is the fetch dog. So let's just copy that over. And then what we need to do is to say that we are going to delete dog. Go away with this. It never used to bring up IntelliSense on top of the thing that you're trying to actually look at. It always used to be below or to the side, but now it brings it over the top, so you can't see what you're doing. So delete dog takes in a dog name, but it returns either unit or an error as its result. The URL is going to be the same, dogs/dog name. Let us double check within our API. Delete /dogs/name delete. Yeah, that's correct. That bit works the same, but here it's going to be different. We're going to request and delete dog URL dot as str was required before, wasn't it? As str like so. That gives us a request a builder. How do we do the same? Dot send. That gives us the future, so we can wait on that. Oops, wait. And the wait question mark, meaning that if we get an error response at this point, we just short circuit return that error. So that's a response. Put a semicolon there. So this is going to fail because the response we get back here is not a unit, but it's a response. So that's fine. So it's possible that an error could actually occur here. You know, maybe that dog wasn't found. But for the purposes of this quick demo, let's just return OK of unit at this point. And then obviously we would intercept this and return an error result if we needed to do that at a later date, and then put something in the user interface that can detect these errors coming back and have a consistent way of displaying it to the user. But to be honest, this really shouldn't happen because you are trying to delete a dog by clicking on it. And, you know, the fact that you clicked on it in the first place meant that it was loaded from the database, so it should exist and should be possible to delete it. So that's my excuse, and we'll run with that. Okay, so that's that there. Obviously, we don't call it yet. We will need to wire that in as a handler for the input on click. And we can do that right there. On click equals delete dog dog dot name. Okay, so this, I'm just thinking there's a layer above this what we want to do. Obviously, at the point when we go in here and click delete, we're going to delete the dog. So it doesn't make sense that we then stay on the dog page because that dog doesn't exist anymore. So I think what we should do is when we call into that delete handler and that returns the OK result, at that point, we should then redirect back to the main or the home page, and the home page will reload the list of dogs, which will not have the dog that we just deleted. And then that gives sensible feedback to the user of what's happened. So let us put in a handle delete here. Async function handle delete. Again, it's a dog name coming in. And what does it return? I don't know. Because we've got to somehow redirect the user interface. Right, so yeah, I'm forgetting I've got my on submit handler here, so we certainly don't want to be doing that. Going back to the on submit handler, the problem we've got is that this is a synchronous function and it has to be that way, I believe. And obviously this is async. So having asked my AI companion, it suggests we use this spawn local, which presumably is just going to allow some sort of background thread to go off to then call into our delete dog with the dog name and await the result from that. If we get an OK result, then we navigate. Otherwise, we do some sort of logging just to show that there's an error that occurred there. So let's see if it's happy with that. We just need to bring in spawn local from Lepto's task. It's nice that it gives us multiple places to find what should be the same thing. Let's go with Lepto's task and hope for the best. And then, actually, we need to do this trick again. Navigate equals use navigate like so. And then we just bring in use navigate. Yeah, sorry, I missed one of the steps it's saying. So it's saying we need to first capture some stuff here. That's the end of that one. Like so. And then here we say, let navigate equal navigate dot clone. And then let dog name EL equals dog name EL dot clone. So capturing just from our local copies of those here. And then we return the closure, which will be what onSubmit uses. And then there and there, we're just using these from within here. So hopefully, no, still doesn't like it. So Rust is quite obtuse in some places. So it seemed that you need to do this navigate clone once, otherwise, because we've got two levels of closure here, this one and this one effectively. And for some reason, we need to clone that navigate twice so that each closure has its own copy. I don't fully understand that, to be honest, but that seems to have solved that one. But we've introduced something else down here, which is odd because I don't think I've moved or changed anything down here. The only thing is the fact that we call into onSubmit from there. Oh dear, there's like chains problems from one place to another to another. So it looks like the same thing again. So that should be decoupled. It shouldn't be bringing the dog in any place here within the onSubmit handler. So I would have thought that'd be okay, but okay, so it seems the issue here is the same thing again, is that we've got this onSubmit that's defined before and captured outside of the closure. So my little helper is telling me it's better to just do this whole thing in the line here, which is horrible, but yeah, I'm not convinced this is a great way of writing user interfaces. It's probably just down to my inexperience with Rust, but it's quite frustrating. It's quite frustrating. Let's just comment that out for the moment and save here. And nothing changed. Save. Nope. Pet dog name equals dog name el dot clone. So what we can do here is create a lot of our properties in this position or inside this particular closure. Still need to move a few things around, I think. Let's just see where we get. Let's get rid of that. Is that it? So we have moved, creating all of these elements and this navigate function here. Then within this closure, we clone just what we need. And then call the spawn local there, and then seems like it's happy. I just want to do a trunk build again just to double check. So here we are. Let's go and take a look at Kuma. And then what should happen is if we hit delete dog here, we should go back to the home page and we should see that Kuma has gone from that list. So at the moment, Kuma is here. We hit delete and we're back and Kuma has gone. Okay, so that's the delete functionality done. The final thing to do with this particular component is we want to be able to run it in a mode where we can create a new dog. And the way that will work is it will pass a query string parameter saying create equals true. And then the dog name is irrelevant. What I will do when it opens in that instance is to clear the form and make the form writable. So you can enter the new dog's name, you can enter the breed, and you can enter the date of birth and the current weight. And then we can create the dog based on that when they click submit. So that button will change from delete to create. And then when we hit the create button, it's obviously going to call into the API to create a new dog. And then rather than redirecting back to the home page, it will redirect back to the new dog's specific page. So it'll open up in the read-only view on what looks to be the same page. So sounds easy. Probably isn't. Let's bash out some code. First thing we need to do up here is to say let query equal, and we want to use query map. So the same way we used use params map down here, but we can use it up at the top level. Use query map like so. So we say let is create, which will be a Boolean, equals query with apparently, and that takes, oh joy, another closure. Whoop, hello, oh, that one. Like so. And then that we need to get, I'll tell you what, let us save, because we probably need to bring in use query map first. I find it's easier to do this like step by step, saving as you go, because then the sort of syntax highlighting catches up and it should know, yeah, there we go. So Q is a params map. Oh, okay. It's just because I haven't saved again, right? Yep. Okay. So Q is a params map, and therefore I know that we can use q.get, and that gets the query called create, and that returns an option of string, and the string would be the actual value, true or false, I guess. And we can quite easily turn that into Boolean by saying if that is equal to sum of true. If the query string create is provided and its value is true, then is create is true. If it's provided but its value is blah 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 or false, then is create is false. And if the create parameter isn't provided at all, then is create is false. So it's only if it's provided and if it's true. So we can do it like this. So if that is equal to sum true, then that's what we need. Okay, dot wants a string in this case, a to string. Cool. Okay, that gives us what we wanted. So we've got the isCreate variable. We are going to use that in two places. The first is going to be down here. And I'm just so scared it's going to do the same nonsense. Changing the signature of closure because you're capturing a variable from outside its scope. Let's have a look at see what happens though. So here we want to say the value is equal to, and then we can say maybe if is create, then create dog, else delete dog. Like so. It does appear happy with that. Let's just test this first part of it, shall we? Rather than going too far down the rabbit hole of closures, chasing variables that closures are capturing. So we've navigated here normally. This gives us the normal view, and this says delete dog. Now, if we change this to provide create equals true, and dog name is irrelevant to this, we can probably just leave that empty. Maybe. Let's see what happens here. Nope. It does need a name. Yeah, that didn't work. Probably the reason it hasn't worked, I think it's loaded up that form, but obviously there's nothing to do. We can't get that dog. It doesn't exist. So what we need to do here up at the front, where we go and, sorry, let me go back to the code. Up here, where we are going to fetch the dog, we've got to say actually, no. If isCreate is true, then we create a new empty dog. If isCreate is false, then we do what we've done here. So let's just naively try and bash that in. So if is create do this, else do that. So this needs to return a result of dog DTO or error. So therefore, we should be able to say OK, which turns it into result type dog DTO name is empty string, breed is empty string, date of birth is, what is it, UTC now? Yeah, feedings. We've not really done anything with feedings. I'll see if we can get round to that, but we may have to just leave that as a future exercise. It's really just a matter of displaying a list, but then, you know, this is a list at a lower level than the dog DTO itself. So we need to actually be able to, you know, create a new feeding, modify an existing feeding and all of that stuff. It's just layers of complexity that is kind of just doing more of the same. So it doesn't really give much of a demonstration to just carry on doing that. So feedings, we can just say that's an empty array for the moment, like so. Current weight 0. How's that look? needs UTC in from naive date, which we don't have on the user interface side. We don't. Let's go and grab that from the API side. So that is, sorry, what am I looking for? Chrono. Save that down, and I can bring in Chrono UTC. And it wants a date time. Oh, there you go. Date to naive. And this is just inferring that as an integer, so I have to use 0.0 like so. Okay. Here we go. And it's capturing state from its environment. What is it capturing? It's capturing is create. Okay, so we need 2 levels. Oh dear. 2 levels of closure here. And we copy is create here. So this makes an outer closure, and then this is just an asynchronous block within this closure. And it's happy with that. Oh, this is stretching my brain a bit. So yes, so this is our closure. Then within the closure, we can capture that state, but do this in the synchronous part of it. And then it's effectively returning. This is an expression which equates to the body of this closure that then gets returned, but it means we can do some copying of state here, which is then used within the closure, but it's captured within this, not within the overall component, if you see what I mean. I think I understand this, but it's a bit gnarly. But there we go. So that seems to be working. So that means that we'll get a blank dog if we load it up. And indeed it has worked down there. Let's see what that looks like. And there we go, yeah. So right behind the scenes, it's created a new dog there. It's not editable yet. We need to sort that out. Date of birth, we're not going to get to the point of creating a date picker for this. We'll just have to assume that you can type it in the same format as what it shows here. Because it'll need to pass that back to a naive date, as is, and then the current weight, and then create dog. We'll at the moment try to delete that dog because we've not implemented a switch within the submit handler. So first up, read only equals not is create. Like so. It's happy. And these are now editable. Super. We have this here. We need to again capture is create. And for the time being, we want all of these things as they are. Maybe here, if is create, then do this. Else do that. May need to copy is create one more level down, and these all resolve to unit, so we can just say unit for the time being. That should still compile. It does. That's very nice. And what that should mean is that if we hit this with an unknown dog name, it's not going to delete it because it now says create dog here. Nothing happens because we haven't implemented that side of it yet. But it isn't redirecting us back as it would do if it had deleted a dog. So this means that we need to have the ability to create the dog here. Remind ourselves of what we need for that. So the handler for create dog or insert dog takes in a create dog payload, which is where? Okay, yeah, it's in our shared resources, isn't it? So there's our create dog payload. So we can actually create that from, it's a good reminder, we can actually create that from within the user interface code. And that's what we want to do now. We want to create a create dog payload here. Let payload equals create dog payload, like so. And it needs name, breed, initial weight, and date of birth. So we are doing the, so we've already got that there. So we've got dog name, dog name. Now then, we need the other aspects of this, and so far we've only brought across dog name, which is needed by both of these. So I think for the other, we could do everything here and then it's kind of wasted because delete dog doesn't need that stuff. So let's copy these bits here into where is created as true. And now we are accessing the others. So the breed element. Breed and current weight. And then what are the types of these things? String, string, float, and a naive date. So we are probably going to need to clone, because we're creating a new thing that gets passed away, and the compiler can't really track what's happening to that value. We are setting date of birth to pass from string. Yep. And then current weight. And I don't know how we pass. Let's just just save it like that for the minute and see if we've got any errors anywhere there. Not yet. Let's give it the semicolon. Right, okay, that's fine. We can import that. Import that. And this is called initial weight, isn't it? Not current weight. So it says naive date passed from str, and that needs not just a string, but also a format, which apparently percent uppercase y, percent lowercase m, percent lowercase d to give us our 4-digit year, month and day. And then that gives us an option, so we can throw an expectation on that saying invalid date. Hello. So that should be fine. This is apparently num str.parse current weight. Sorry. This is apparently just parse at the end of, and it can infer what you want to pass it into, apparently. Oh, and dot expect. Invalid number. Great stuff. So we have got our payload. We are ready to call in to insert dog. So we want to do something similar to this, slightly different. We're calling into insert dog. We are giving it our payload. And then when OK comes back, we are navigating to slash dogs slash dog slash. Otherwise, we log the error. Oh dear, dog name dot clone. We just use clone everywhere, don't we? That should be right. Dog name is a string. We should be able to clone it. Let dogs URL equal. Yep, cool. That should be fine. We just need to create insert dog. Insert, hello, I'm typing insert dog. Dog being a create dog payload. Yep. A create dog payload. So that's fine. So that all works. Now so we can concentrate on making sure this function is correct, we need to post. And post takes a URL, and that gives us a request builder. So we probably have to do something first. And the URL is /dogs. /dogs, like so. Very simple, dogs URL. Like that. And I'm guessing before we send, we need to say dot payload body. We can just use .json. I didn't try that. .json and dog. Which could fail. Let's get rid of that. Okay, it doesn't have the serialized trait. So, okay, that's happy. So we are using that URL, passing the dog, serializing the dog to JSON, exiting early if that fails for some reason, then we're sending it, awaiting, and exiting early if that fails. Otherwise, we return OK. And then down here, we should then go through and navigate back to that new dog. So theoretically, this should work. We are creating Kuma. Bernese mountain dog. He is 1 year old today and weighs a whopping 64.3 kilograms. And that's correct. It surprised me a little bit. It has, oh, no, maybe not. But it did redirect back to Kuma. I don't know why these are still writable. Let's go back to home page. Yeah, that didn't work. So why it redirected but didn't create the new dog, which is a surprise. Because I would have thought if this returns anything other than OK, it's going to hit the error path here, and we will not do the navigating. Well, that's confusing. That's what we redirect to, dog's URL, and that seemed to be happening. It's that dog was succeeding. It must be. But it's not inserting into the database. Yep, definitely didn't insert a new dog. So let us have a look. Find where our actual source code lives. Oh, well, that's annoying. We don't have source mapping. Oh, that's very disappointing indeed. I'm sure this can be set up, but I don't want to go through that now. So what can we do? Stare at the code a bit more. We're coming through the is create. I'm going to assume we're doing this. Of course, it's all web packed and that's not going to help us at all. Great. Console.log it is then. So we can use log bang to say success inserting dog, like so. Log bang, like so. That at least shows us that we are calling the right branch in here, and we really are getting to the point where insert dog thinks it has succeeded, and for some reason it hasn't. Well, let's take a look at that. So back here we can see our console, Kuma 405 method not allowed. Okay, so it says about to create a dog, but then it's failing for post to 80 dogs. It should be 3,000 dogs. Is that where I've cocked up? Yep, it certainly is. So that was a silly one. So, yep, we can't call into an API that's hosted on our user interface. We need to call into our actual API. That should do the trick there. But it's still very strange that that didn't take us back through the error route. Kuma. Success inserting dog. We didn't see that before, so it's kind of it's a bit strange. We can still edit, which is disappointing. But Kuma has appeared. So I'm going to call that a win. So we have got to the point where we've sort of demonstrated some sort of CRUD type operations here with our user interface. We can go in, we can delete a dog that already exists. We can find a way in to create a dog. Probably what we should do is to put a button on the somewhere down here that allows us to do the create and leads us to that page that we've just demonstrated, allows us to create a new dog. And I think to just wind up this demonstration, I will go in and come up with a page that allows us to look at the history of the dog's weights, either in a table or, if we really can, a graph. And that will just show all of the potential aspects that you can get with this sort of user interface. Obviously, it won't be complete, but anyone watching this can understand what parts need to be done to get to the final completed state, and it would be a bit of a slog, but it would be possible. So I think that's fine for the moment, and I think it's high time that we pause for coffee. After this series, I'm about to kick off on a worthwhile tangent into the world of microcontrollers and digital electronics. It got me thinking about how this is a good thing for all software developers, hobbyists and pros alike. When you're bashing out enterprise software, it's rare that you come across physical constraints. To all intents and purposes, you have unlimited memory, CPU and disk space. If it's cheaper to scale out than to spend some time optimizing code, then right or wrong, that's often the path that gets taken. However, the world of microcontroller development is diametrically opposed. You're often building to a particular price point, so your little gadget can roll off a production line for $24.99. That's not going to get you 2 terabytes of storage, and you can't clock the thing at 3.5 gigahertz because a tiny battery would run out in 5 minutes. So as a developer, you enter a fascinating world of close-to-the-metal coding, reduced abstractions because each layer of abstraction consumes vital resources. You'll find yourself coding tight loops that read and write from hardware registers directly, or at most with a very thin layer of helper libraries. You'll read data sheets and learn how to register interrupt handlers. This is what passes for multi-threading at this level. All in all, it gives you an appreciation of what's going on a workstation. You'll begin to understand what it takes to make such a complex system stable, when you've struggled just with controlling a few devices on an I2C bus. But more than this, you'll have lots of fun moving from Hello World to blinking LED. As always, please like, comment, subscribe. If you really do enjoy this content, just a few likes and comments here and there are enough to encourage me to keep going. So the last session was a bit of a struggle, but we got there in the end. So in this final session, what I want to do is just to tidy up some loose ends. Like, we need a button for creating the dogs. We need to be able to navigate back to the home page easily. And then for one final little flourish, I want to add a page for showing the graph of the dog weights. So there's a fair amount to get done in this last little bit. We better bash out some code. So here we are back in our project. If I first open home.rs, this is basically where we're showing the list of dogs. And what I want to do is to add a button at the bottom here, which will be what we click to create a dog. And that will, of course, direct us to that URL we've just been working with. So this is creating the table, and the table body is the list of dogs there. So we don't need, I don't think, to do it within this section. So we should be able to put here, and then input type equals, let's call that create dog and see what that looks like first. Is it value equals? Hopefully that does the trick. And so let's take a quick look at that. Perfect. So all we need to do now is to implement a handler that will use the same navigation logic to redirect us to that create dog page. And what we can do is just take a look at the dog page where we had the navigation. And where was that? Navigate here. And then it's navigate to clone, and then navigate to use navigate. And then not using it inside here. So we should be okay to say on click equals. Am I doing something wrong there? On click equals. Okay, so no quotes required. Let's just check that. Navigate to, and then slash dog. I can never quite remember our routings. It's slash dog slash name, and then our special create terminology. So something like that should do the trick, I think. On click, navigate. So that's fine. Let's save it down. It's going to want us to add use navigate in, which we can do. Oh yeah, and it takes that funny argument, doesn't it? Which is, whereabouts is that? Like so. Same issue with closures. Oh, because we are in one here, of course. No, we're not. That was just for the view. This is so tricky. Why? I'm not inside this closure. This is where I would expect to require creating the copy. We've just got this. Obviously, if I delete that, everything's fine. If I was to delete this whole chunk here, okay, what if I create an on-click handler for it then? So it just uses its own stuff directly within there. And that is create dog. Like so. Ah, really? So it's happy with this. It must be this view macro that's causing a problem, but we're not using any values. We're not capturing any variables from here. Okay, so it looks like the issue is here that I should be passing in a closure for this. So if I change that to move, then we have a closure for this on-click handler. And then that is calling into create dog. And we could have moved it back in line, but seeing as we've created that function, we may as well do that. So that should work. If I hit create dog, okay. Oh dear. Unreachable. Something's panicked. Okay, so that error message seemed to be relating to the fact that Navigate or use Navigate couldn't find the router outlet that it sits within and therefore couldn't do the navigation. And I don't know why, but by moving it away from that create dog function and putting it back in line here with the move, that seems to do the trick. So if I have a look at it now, create dog will redirect us correctly to the dog creation page. So that's fine. And now what I want to do is to make this whole banner image clickable. And by clicking that, it will take us back to the home page. So let's stick something in for that. We can presumably do the same thing, bearing in mind some of the lessons that we've learned. Bring in the navigate method there, like so. And then here we can say on click equals move to slash. So let's try that. Seems happy, but it isn't. What's the error message we're getting? Same thing. Is it because I'm declaring this from outside the router? Seems a stretch, but let's try doing that in here. So it compiles, and maybe it works. Get to there. Nope. I think development with Rust means that nothing ever works first time. You think you've learned something by doing it this way, and yet in this instance, it doesn't work that way. So ChatGPT is telling me I can do this, but that's what I was doing before. I don't think that's going to make any difference. Yeah, just of course it fail every time. Okay, so this is what ChatGPT is saying, and it kind of makes sense. It's saying use navigate needs to be within the router context. So where we declare navigate has to be inside the router. So it is suggesting that I change the app component to move the router out of it. So the app component just has the header and container here. And then we change the main function where we are mounting just the app at the moment to instead mount a view that has the router and the app there. And that makes sense to me. So that means that the router is always there. And I'm going to try that. I have a feeling that will work. But this is a really hit and miss development style. But let's do it. Let's make that change. So we've already got the view there. So that's nice. We can just say, move that onto multiple lines. And then we are wrapping our app with the router. Like so. That looks good. And then we are removing the router at this level. So that builds. It seems to display the page correctly. And the routing works. That was a bit of a faff, but that's done. Nice. So now we've got the various sort of navigation aspects we wanted. We've got the ability to delete a dog, and we can navigate back. We can create a dog. You can see this list here. But what I want to do is when we go to the dogs page, to add another button that will show the weights. Maybe we can get it to, if we click on the current weight, it will open up the weights graph. So let's stick that in there now. So let's put another navigate on the current weight when it is in read-only mode like this. We don't want it to happen when we're creating a dog because we want to be able to enter a weight there. But when we're viewing it in read-only mode, if we click on the weight, it will then navigate to the dog's weights page. And then we can implement the dog's weights page to add. Oh, Mr. T, you brought your Ted with you, huh? Oh, thank you for that, Mr. T. Thank you. That's very helpful. Oh, but Captain Scrunch is here, and he's brought the big guns. He's brought the lady. I can have the lady, can I? Oh, thank you, Captain Scrunch. Oh, and she's gone. Okay, so after that interlude, yes, we need to implement the dog's weights page. So let's bash out some code for that. So we've already got the root set up for dog's weights page. We even have the template of the page itself. So first of all, whilst we're in that mode, let us add the navigate here for this input. Yes, we need an on-click handler, which will navigate only if isCreate is false. We should be able to do that. On click equals move like so. Say if is create navigate. That's dog.name in this context, isn't it? Okay, let's create a block. Let URL equal, and then we'll move that out of here into here, and that will give us a little bit more detail. Let's navigate to URL like so. So we just used a test or something there. So we would be happy with that. I see what's happening. So we're kind of taking ownership of, so even though we're bringing in dog here and we think we're cloning it, that's a shallow copy. So the strings within it still point to the original values. And obviously we can't have multiple ownership of something like that. So what we need to do is to get the dog name cloned up at the top. Dog name is used here as well, but that can happily shadow what we create up here. That doesn't matter. Dog name equals dog dot name dot clone. Should be happy with that. We should be able to use dog underscore name there. which gets rid of that error. But we are using navigate in multiple places, so that's causing this to complain. Can we just use navigate there? Ah, right. No, we can't. The reason being is that this is something that gets called when the page is first rendered, and therefore the router is within the context. You know, the route is available, but within the onSubmit handle, that's not necessarily the case. So we need to grab that and clone it there. But again, because we're using it also down here, maybe we have to have our own no. I could have like a navigate 1 and a navigate 2. Oh boy. Let's just prove out what I just said. Yep. So the issue is, of course, by using this move syntax, it's saying that all of the variables that closure captures are moving into it. The ownership moves into there. And because navigate, we were creating and using it in 2 separate places, that's not going to work. It can only be moved into one place, of course. That's the way things work in Rust. So we can either do something like this, where we're creating one specifically for each usage, or we start using into, we start moving into using like an arc or an RC to wrap and reference count the use of this variable. I don't want to mess around with that. So let's, this looks a bit hacky, but let's just leave it as it is. This is going to work for us, I think. And that should mean that if we go into a read-only dog like so, click on current weight, it takes us to the dog weights page. Right. Final step, let's implement the dog weights graph. Right, of course, in order to be able to plot a nice graph of dog weights, we actually need to have a set of dog weights for a given dog, which we didn't have in our test data. What I've just done is asked my friend ChatGPT here to generate me a set of randomish weight data for the dog, and it's basically said it's used gentle mean reverting random walk, so it looks like natural fluctuations capped between 57 and 65 kilograms, and today's weight set to 63 kilos, which is what we were hoping for. And I've run that set into the database. So now what we need to do is to go and work out how we can implement a little graph to show this within Leptos. Okay, so I found this package called Leptos Chartistry, and this might be something that we can go with. Let's take a look at this interactive demo. The sort of line graph that we would want. So line charts, bar charts. Okay, nice. All right, that's unfortunate. So does none of their example code work? No. Okay. So in the GitHub repository, there definitely seems to be a lot of examples here. Okay, I mean, this looks like it does what we need to. There might be a bit of head scratching to work out how to actually get the data into the graph and to display it, but let's have a go. Let's see what we can get. Let's go into our dog weight page, our dog weights page. So the first thing we need to do is the same as the first thing we did in dog.rs. We need to get the dog name from the path, and we need to go and load the dog weights data from the API for that dog. So let's have a look at that. We need to sort of unwind this a little bit because we don't need the query and isCreate thing, but we need this. And we're going to have to modify it back into what we need specifically. So let's do that there. Place that here like so. Don't need isCreate. Don't need the if statement. And we're going to go for fetch dog weights like so. And then we can implement that in a similar manner to what we did for fetch dog over here, except we are going to a different part of the API. Like so, and we are hitting localhost 3000 get weights by name. So it's dogs name / weights. Let's just copy that over so there's no mistake. Like that. That will bring back our set of dog weights. And if we have a look in our handlers here, we can see what is our response type. And it is mapping to a list of dog weight DTO. Result is a vec of dog weight DTO or error. So here we can say we are mapping to JSON vec dog weight DTO. That's part of our shared types, so we should be able to bring that in like so, and then bring in request like that. Very nice. And this is dog weights. And then back here, we can bring in our old faithful suspense. Dog weights. And that is a vec of dog weight DTO. So we can just change that to weights. What we could do is just very quickly output a view with, don't know if you can hear that. There's a dog dreaming sound coming from outside my door somewhere. Sounds like a good dream. And let's say, so this is a list of dog weights, and we would want to therefore iterate over them. Let's just copy that. Weights. Iter dog weight, dog underscore weight. Like that. We don't want any of this stuff. We are going to resolve that to a view. And we can just say which one. Weight. Let's just make it a P. That's probably okay. And then if we go down into Kuma, where we created that set of sample weights, 404 not found, dogs, Kuma, weights. Okay. / dogs. Should that matter? Okay, there we go. So it was just that double slash. So it looks like a happy set of weights has come through. We know the dog name from the page, so we can put that as a heading at the top. Our dog name is... Okay. Let us move that outside of here. I think we can do that. Do something like this. Let's just say we are creating a page title rather than having like dog name 1 and dog name 2 again. We can just say waits for. Hopefully it's happy with that. And it isn't. Let's just borrow it then. This is this double move thing again, isn't it? I swear we're creating 10 times more copies of things than we actually need. Anyway, so there we can put in title. Save that. Same thing again. Okay, that's that. Excellent. And now we just need to drop in our graph. So we need to add that graph library to our cargo.toml. Good coffee. So here's an example chart. Bring that in from Leptos Chartistry. An aspect ratio. Rotated label. Series. So that should be fine. And now this is dog weight DTO. And it is the X series is the date. And that is the weight. And that is weights. I don't know what that means. Okay, and this is probably the same sort of moaning, but title, is it? That should work. You know what aspect ratio is, right? Aspect ratio. It's there. Colon. You don't give any completion for this. From env. As borrowed from into. This is all just standard stuff. Okay, I'm just... So it's saying this sort of thing we can say as F64. Okay, so it requires aspect ratio. Is that it? Okay, that's surprising. Let's see what came out. Nothing at all. Well, that's disappointing. We've got some sort of graphy thing there, but it's not showing our data correctly at all. One potential positive point is it has picked up April, May, June, July, August, so it does know the span of dates that we were putting into it. But for some reason, it's squashed it down to 0. And that didn't help. Saturday, Thursday, April, Sunday, Friday. What the? One of the other things that I heard is that we should change that to 2 milliseconds. No. Timestamp millis as F64. No, it doesn't like that. Okay, that's interesting. Just removing all the labels, and it looks like there's some sort of graph coming up there. So I think clearly one of the issues is that it's just not displaying the expected vertical extent. We give it a height. So I just grabbed this from some of the example code. Don't know if it'll make a difference, but let's have a look. Okay, that's interesting. So what is this separate line? Why have we got 2 separate things being plotted? Okay, so let's get rid of that. And we've got series. So this is from the example. A series, new, data type, data.x, and then it's saying dot line, and then line new. So yeah, this kind of looks the same. That looks correct. So I don't know why we get some strange data. Well, I mean, I could faff around with this for hours, but I think we've proved the point. We are actually displaying a graph of the dog's weights here. We can see the weight. We can't necessarily see the legend for... Let's try and put that one back and see how that looks. Let's see what we get if we go back to just using a date there. I mean, it still works. Still got this wacky line, but other than that, I guess this crap is coming from this strange additional line. We've got some weirdness in our data that's causing that. Okay. Yeah, there's kind of like a funny line in the data here. So can we just delete that row. Delete row. Refresh. And that's gone away. The weird line has gone away, but we've still got strange stuff down here. But I'm going to call that a win anyway. So we could spend hours trying to work out exactly why that graph isn't quite working, but we've demonstrated what we needed to for this, that we can take this separate page, which can be navigated to. We could do it for CSDog as well, but we haven't got any data for that, so that kind of gives us a bit of a weird view, and that's fine. So anyway, that's it. Our app is as complete as it's going to get for this particular demo. We've gone from the point where we had just creating domain types in Rust to the point where we had an API working. We've got our user interface put into place. We've got Docker containers behind all of this stuff. And now we've got like we've fleshed out the main points that can demonstrate how you would create a full-featured user interface. So we can do things like displaying the data from the database. We can create new data. We can delete bits of data, and we can plot graphs based on some of the data. So yeah, that's good enough for now.
Well, we made it. We completed some end-to-end aspects of the app, navigating around, adding and amending the dog details, creating new dogs, and even plotting their weights on a graph. It's rough and ready, sure. No proper error handling, no security, lots of things that we should be able to do but can't. But I think I've taken my Rust skills to the point where I can make a full-featured app out of this. So I'm taking my Rust hat off for now. And next time, we're going to be bridging the gap between software and hardware with a microcontroller IoT project. Once again, likes and comments are my oxygen. They encourage me to press on with these glimpses into my crazy hobbies. And, as always, thanks for watching.
Do the schnozzle dive, Captain Scrunch! You loony! Captain Scrunch! Who's a silly guy?